All right, everybody, welcome into episode 131 here on this Memorial Day weekend. It is May 24th, 2024. Of course, Monday is Memorial Day, and therefore it's the start of summer here in the United States. I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, as always, and I don't think I've said my name yet. I am Nick Hill, and joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, where I guess you guys are heading into winter, it's Gus Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing?
Yeah, today actually the weather changed quite a bit. In the morning was hot and sunny, and then in the afternoon was chilly and rainy. And I guess this is gonna keep for the weekend here. But ready to talk some sports now, especially in the diamond and in the basketball courts.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because we have a lot of college sports to actually start off with, and we'll get to some of the professional sports here in a little bit. But we want to start off with some college baseball here as the Tennessee Volunteers are currently playing in Hoover. What's been a pretty testy game tonight against Mississippi State. Of course, Vols enter into the SEC tournament ranked number one, trying to secure a number one seed for next week's NCAA tournament that would begin. However, they are currently trailing to Mississippi State 5-3 here in the bottom of the sixth inning that has just begun. And I'll tell you this, Gus, it's kind of a weird situation. They lost to Vanderbilt back on Wednesday, but then came back yesterday and won to advance to today. And if they lose today, they're eliminated from the SEC tournament. But it's kind of weird because for us, it doesn't really matter. Like Tennessee is going to be a top 2 to 3 seed no matter what. They may have already had the one seed completely locked up. I mean, Kentucky has been eliminated from this tournament, and that was the main competitor for that one seed. And Tennessee still beat them head to head in a series on the road in Lexington. I think at this point Tennessee is going to be the one seed no matter what. And honestly, I don't mind that Tennessee loses this game. Save the arms for next week.
I mean, first of all, before talking about the Vols, it feels like the upset took over this SEC baseball tournament. I guess if I'm not mistaken, all top seeds lost in this tournament. You mentioned Kentucky, Tennessee. Um, I believe there were other two top seeds that lost. So the underdogs are kind of taking over this SEC tournament.
Which makes sense because the underdogs here, a lot of them, like in Miss State's case, they're trying to get a home field in the round of 16 next week. Or you're happy teams like LSU that are just trying to get into the field. Those teams are going to play way harder this week because they have the most to gain and the most to lose. For a team like Tennessee, they can afford to not go all in here. It's reminiscent of the basketball tournament, which we actually, ironically, also lost to Mississippi State, remember, on a Friday. But didn't really hinder us. We came back and went all the way to the Elite Eight. Alabama also lost on that Friday in the quarterfinals. And and they went to the Final Four. So I guess the question is here, why are these SEC tournaments not relevant for teams that are at the top, basically?
That's fair, I guess, because now with more pressure, especially with the top teams to kind of do better in the national tournament, like you kind of see the mirroring of basketball and baseball, kind of especially in the Southeastern Conference. You do well in the regular season. You're gonna be in the national tour in the postseason. For basketball is the March Madness, and baseball is the route to the College World Series. So you kind of, of course, your focus is not the same. Like if you're, for example, tonight, Mississippi State came in as a fifth seed, so they need to win to, you said, home field advantage, or like a You play at home in the national tournament. But for other teams like South Carolina, it's do or die situation. They needed to win to survive, and they are winning. They are in the semifinals. They're going to face the current national champion LSU. So you see teams that kind of have more need to do well in this conference tournament to survive the season.
Right, and it really brings into question how much should the selection committee value these conference tournaments? Because it feels like it's so random. Baseball is such a random sport anyway, to an extent, and it just feels like handing out auto bids or maybe elevating a team to a seed line because of what they do in Hoover or any other conference tournament feels kind of ridiculous. I think you should what matters though the entire season as a whole should matter more than this last week in May.
But then, uh, I mean, don't you have to take into consideration something about the conference tournament? Of course the winner should get in. Then if they don't, it's a meaningless tournament.
Yeah, you know, and that's the thing, right? Because the SEC obviously they want to make sure they make money, and they want to ensure because Hoover is the premier college conference tournament. As the balls get out of the bottom of the sixth inning, they're still down 5-3. Um, but it's just if you are at the very top, then why go hard at all? And that's just it's a tough sell, a tough situation for sure. Um, But win or lose, Tennessee is in a pretty good situation to move forward. And I do want to present real quickly a bracketology. Remember, we used to show these in basketball all the time, but we also have them for baseball. This is from Baseball America. If you'll pull it up, Gus, you see Tennessee right now, the number one overall seed, and it is worth noting the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament has not won the national championship since 1999. In fact, on many occasions, have not made it to Omaha. I remember Tennessee 2 years ago was the number one overall seed and fell to Notre Dame in the Super Regional.
Yeah, I was
Gus,
gonna mention and lost at home. That was one of the most traumatic eliminations I think in Tennessee athletics history.
I mean, 2 years later, like it feels like a blip on the radar. I think South Carolina was way more traumatic. And granted, I
But
was there.
that was at home. But that was at home, and also that team was so hot. That's why, at least in the top five.
Yeah, well, I think to me, like Loyola Chicago, the Purdue losses in basketball, those to me are much more traumatic than that loss. Because in between that failure, and yes, that was Vitello's best team, we made it to Omaha the year before and the year after. So like that one stings way less because yes, you gave away a College World Series that you should have gone to, but then the year after you went to a College World Series that you shouldn't have gone to. Um, so I guess now for me here in 24, what I'm interested to see is with a team that's going to have another top seed. This is the third time in 4 years you're going to be at least a top three seed. It might be the second time you're a one seed. Can they handle that pressure at home? Because when they were playing Notre Dame in 2022, they kind of let that get to them a little bit. And I still have questions about the pitching on this team. I don't think this team is quite, honestly, is as good as that 22 team. As you can see here, we got San Diego, James Madison, and Wright State. Now, imagine this Wright State again. Remember what we had to do the last time we played Wright State.
Oh.
It took a miracle grand slam from Drew Gilbert.
In the bottom of the nine.
So I don't want anyone thinking that that's a gimme. Now, I haven't really watched any of those teams. I really haven't watched many of the other teams, to be honest with you. I just know well enough that when it comes to the baseball tournament, you don't discount anybody. So, as you can see, some of the other ones, you got North Carolina here actually at 2, Kentucky at 3. This feels like a basketball.
That's why I
top
feel like
seed.
baseball and basketball, like college baseball and college basketball, kind of they are a lot similar.
Oh, for
They're
sure.
becoming a lot of similar, like in the programs as well. Oral Roberts we see in basketball and now in baseball. Um, you see Irvine as well. Um,
Also, Lowell Vanderbilt not at hosting. There in the Indiana State region, and then of course you got Oregon State there, and yeah, so it'll be interesting. Of course, we'll actually get to look at a bracket next week because I believe they select on Monday.
I want to see who are the last four out in the
Okay,
bottom.
so this is your bubble right here. So last four in is Kansas State, Georgia Tech, Northeastern, and James Madison. Um, first four out is UNC Wilmington, Troy, Cincinnati, and Louisville. Next four out is Cal, Xavier, Kansas, and Georgia Southern.
So I guess they're like for the SEC, it's either some teams are either win or out.
Yeah, so LSU's in South
Or
Carolina.
I saw Florida too.
Yeah, of course, we got Georgia right here. Well, Oklahoma and Texas are in. They're going to be here next year. Got Florida right there. By the way, Florida State, Southern Miss, and Florida all in the same bracket. That'll be an interesting region. Yeah, I don't see I don't see South Carolina, but they're clearly fighting right now in this tournament. No, they're down here.
But I don't see Mississippi State, so that's why they desperately needed to win tonight.
Mississippi State is right here.
Oh,
There too.
okay.
But I believe they're the highest team that's not hosting. So a win over Tennessee could jump them over Oregon State. But I will say this: Tennessee does have two on base right now, top of the seventh with one out. So we'll see if the Vols can overcome that. But as I said, next week we'll actually have the full NCAA bracket because I believe it gets released on Memorial Day. Now, we do have some good news on the softball tournament side of things because the Tennessee Lady Vols are one win away from Oklahoma City. They completely swept their opening weekend last weekend in the regionals, beating Virginia to advance to this weekend to take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. And they have taken care of business so far. They won 3-2 in game one of that series, and all they have to do is win one more game, and they'll be on to the Oklahoma City for the second straight year in a row.
Yeah, I mean they're having a terrific season. They won the SEC regular season, SEC tournament, so they're gonna have and Alabama Tennessee doesn't matter which sport. It's always a rivalry game.
Absolutely. I have some of the scores up here on the screen as we'll pull it up, Gus. It's 3-2 final here. Tennessee goes on to win, and I believe they would win either they'd play the winner of UCLA and Georgia. UCLA won their game one. So if UCLA wins one of their last two games there, they'll probably take on the Bruins in the first round of the College World Series in Oklahoma City. A bit of a stunner, though. The number one seed, Texas, went down to Texas A&M in a rivalry game there in Austin. So the number 16 seed, A&M, looking to pull off a stunner against number one overall seed. Of course, Oklahoma at the number 2 seed cruised against Florida State and are one away in Norman from taking out Florida State. I believe they're playing now, if I'm correct. So, but I imagine Oklahoma will take care of business. Additionally, Florida's a win away. Oklahoma State and Arizona have to play. Duke is a win away over Missouri. And Stanford and LSU are to play. And we'll see that that bracket here in just a minute. But I think the big story in college athletics today, besides what's going on in the world of baseball and softball, it all eventually comes back to the moneymaker at some point, football, and the long-lasting debate over whether or not schools should directly pay players to pay college football. And it appears as a result of a pending lawsuit, the NCAA has given in, and they have given the blessing for schools to directly pay players. Let me pull up some of the details here. But Gus, what's your initial reaction? We've been talking about this issue for it seems like forever, and
Yeah.
now we're here.
Finally, they are in the 21st century. They are finally giving on this uh, foolish idea that student athletes are amateurs when everything around them are professionals. The TV deals are in the billions, merchandising, ticket sales, everything in college athletics, and definitely comes back to the number one sport, college football, mirrors the NFL. The amount of fans, the TV deals, everything. And so this decision was long overdue. And I talked about this for a long time. How the NCAA were the last like institution standing on a Berlin Wall, and they were on the east side of it, in the kind of communist kind of side of it, where they were archaic, and they finally gave in because when they kind of opened for name, image, and likeness, they opened a Pandora box, and when you open that box, it was inevitable that this day will come.
Absolutely, and I think the question here, I've got a couple of questions here that we're gonna have to wait and see what happens here. So this is we're talking about $2.77 billion over 10 years to over 14,000 former and current college athletes. So this goes back to I believe 2015. So any athlete that's played before, so like a Jared Garantano or Quentin Dorman or even a Hendon Hooker is entitled to some pay for their time at Tennessee, for example. Um, but my question is one: is there going to be some sort of salary cap? Yeah, because you got to think about this. We're not paying players in just one sport. We're paying players in a variety of sports. So it's not like the NFL setting a salary cap, and you're just worried about paying players on 32 teams. Each team has. Oh my goodness! So wow. So Mississippi State was trying for a double play, and they totally squandered it. Wow.
Oh
So
my god, that was awful. And our bases are all loaded.
well, no, we scored. That's tied game. Wow, what a blunder by Mississippi State. They had a double play that would have got them out of a bases loaded situation. They got one out, and the second baseman just blew it.
Yeah, they could, like, the second baseman couldn't get the first out, and then he threw the ball in the most bizarre way.
Yeah, just an absolute blunder there for sure. But anyway, back on this topic. So I kind of want to break up this one down at a time. So first and foremost, how are the funds going to get distributed? Are they going to be distributed based on the popularity of the sport? So obviously, you think about it, like football is the cash money king, and we've talked about this before. How you know I think you used the analogy one time of football is the dad that has to make career decisions, and wherever he has to go to make money, the whole family is going with him. Um, So when it comes then to paying players, does a Hendon Hooker deserve to get paid more than, like a Tess Darby on the women's basketball team? That's the question. Or is, our federal laws like Title IX going to step in and say, okay, you can't be paying one college athlete this amount of money, then pay the other college athlete that amount of money, and you have to pay them equally? Uh, I just wonder how that's going to work.
And if that happens, you're gonna go back to a story you're gonna do next, where NIL is gonna decide recruiting. Because then, if you equal playing, like, hey, you're gonna pay the same whether you go to University of Tennessee or University of Southern Mississippi or University of Southern California. Then if they all have all the same salary cap or the same kind of salary base for all sports, then you really have to go into NIL to make a difference. Then you really need your boosters to step in now with NIL and step in the rest to make sure that top recruits, not only football but basketball, baseball, comes to your university.
Man, and it's just going to be absolutely nuts too, because you're going to have to decide, well, where is this money going to come from to pay players? It's going to come exclusively from TV contracts, because 90% of your TV contract money is going to come from football. I mean, you're going to get some from basketball too, but how much money does baseball get in a TV contract? How much money does softball get in a TV contract? It can't possibly be that much, you know? Compared especially to what football gets, especially if you look at the deal that the SEC linked with ESPN for the upcoming ABC games, like it's going to be blown out of the water, or what the Big Ten has with CBS, Fox, NBC. Those channels aren't paying that to show volleyball, and it's going to be an interesting wake up call, because, as you said, I think it's going to lead. Because I'll say this is not going to get rid of NIL.
No,
Because
no.
we don't have this problem really in NFL, because in NFL, when you sign a contract with a team, you are there. But in this situation, you can, as a football recruit, you can talk to whoever you want and negotiate a contract with the school itself now, and at the same time, negotiate a contract with the NIL of all the various boosters.
And now another question bring in, with now you paying players, they are employees, or at least they're they they're I guess gonna be hold to some contract. How this gonna work with transfer portal?
Yeah,
How, because you brought a good example in the NFL. You just can't. Oh, I don't want to play for the Green Bay Packers anymore. I'm going to transfer to the New England Patriots. No, you have a contract. You either ask for a trade, or pay your buyout.
we're going to see a situation where trades get introduced to the college football. Could you imagine trades? Like, how would that even work? Could you trade scholarships for players?
And then if that happens, then football programs are gonna need to hire a general manager, because then it gets almost like insane for college coaches. Because then, as a coach, you need to recruit high school players. You would need to recruit your current players so they don't leave in transfer portal, or otherwise you're gonna have to see other teams and try to make uh, value on your team to trade. And you're not dealing with 32 teams. You're dealing with 130 football programs, at least in football.
God, could you imagine? Think of the carousel that we have for college football head coaches. Imagine the carousels that we could have over freaking general managers. Like, who would Danny White hire as the first general manager of the Tennessee Volunteers?
But do you think it's insane if that kind of leads to what you're saying for trades, or if other things that you have in pro sports and football? do you think would be necessary to have a general manager, or at least some sort of a kind of kind of like a function like that in a football program?
I mean, if you're managing money, like how, like who's going to sit down and make the decisions? Like, okay, I'm going to give, okay, let's say Nico Imilava, he's going to get 25% of the total team budget, while the kicker's going to get like 2%. Who's going to sit down and make that decision? Is that going to be Josh Heupel? I think for Josh Heupel, that's a lot to put on one person. I mean, these coaches anyway have a lot on them. They're asking for some of the recruiting calendars to be changed up. They feel like they're having to recruit their team every single year. And then you're going to ask them to also manage like how much each player gets played. I mean, can you imagine the chemistry issues if they know, okay, Nico Emi, because you got to remember, these are all, like in the case of like the Vols, this is a public school. So Nico's contract, for example, would be public record. Like I would be able to go as a resident of Tennessee and ask, how much is Nico Emi being paid by the University of Tennessee to play football? We're talking about some really dicey things. So NIL deals, that's not public record right now because those are private deals that are not part of the government. But these would literally be government records. And
Yeah,
I
because
think
NIL not public because it's between a private entity or a private company and a person. There's no you know but one thing I don't understand is like, but there's NIL collectives that universities ran. Are those public? Because uh, there are NILs ran by universities. Am I crazy?
well, I think this is a good time to rope in the next story, and we'll kind of like circle back to the topic
Yeah.
at hand because this is the perfect segue into this Jalen Rashada situation. So Jalen Rashada, if you don't know who that is, he was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school from the state of Florida. He initially committed to the University of Miami, and he had signed a contract with the collective down there. Because Miami, as much crap as we give them, as much as I think Mario Cristobal is not that good of a head coach, just look back at last year's Georgia Tech game, for example, when he literally would not kneel to win a game. But in any case, recruiting-wise, they're pretty stout because they have some big-name boosters that have a ton of money. There's a lot of money in South Florida because Miami's one of the richest cities in this country. There's just a lot of money down there.
They're a private university too.
Exactly. And so Miami's one of those few schools where like they literally benefit from being in a major metropolitan area because most college football programs are not necessarily in major metropolitan areas. Like USC, for example, is another one. But Rashada had signed a $9 million contract with their NIL collective to play football at Miami. He had literally signed on the dotted line. However, Billy Napier in Florida come in, they learn that he is being paid $9 million. And they say, okay, we'll pay you $13 million. And so Rashada breaks the Miami contract, goes to Florida, signs a $13 million contract, but then Florida waits until after signing day, after Rashada has signed, and then they turn around and tell him, okay, Jalen, I hate to tell you this, but we don't have that money. Because what had happened is the guy over the car collective was running a car dealership and he was getting into financial trouble. So he was like, okay, well, I need to actually like put this money somewhere else, Jalen. So I'm going to delay your payment a little bit, but I will pay you. I promise. But he wasn't able to pay $13 million. And Billy Napier had to go to Jalen Rashada and say, well, we can't get you the money right now, Jalen, but I promise you we are going to get you the money. Which, by the way, at the time was completely against NCAA rules. The coach was directly involved in the NIL deal. Not supposed to happen. Not like it matters now because the NCAA basically has no authority thanks to the Tennessee versus NCAA lawsuit. So ironically, the Vols actually help out Florida, assuming they want to keep Billy Napier. And granted, he did beat us last year, so I will have to give him that. But because of the Tennessee NCAA situation, Billy Napier is going to be able to get away with this scot-free, and at least on an NCAA level. Now, if Florida wants to fire him at some point, they could point to that and say, well, we clearly now have legal documents that say he was clearly violating NCAA rules, although I don't know if that would hold up in an arbitration court. So Rashada doesn't get paid. He's already broken a $9 million contract, which he got sued on himself. And just keep that in mind for a second, because then Rashada goes to Arizona State, starts there a year, and now has transferred back to Georgia. And as he was transferring to Georgia, he asked Kirby Smart, hey, Kirby, is it okay if I see our arch rival while I'm on your football team? And Kirby's like, yeah, sure, go for it. So now you have Jalen Rashada, the backup quarterback to Carson Beck on Georgia, has launched a lawsuit against Florida, while he also is dealing with a lawsuit from Miami because he broke Miami's contract. So we have a situation where Miami is suing Jalen Rashada because Rashada broke his contract with them, but then Rashada turned around and is suing Florida because Florida broke his contract with them. It's the most absurd situation I've ever heard in college football in my life.
But one thing I want to understand is, so he's suing the University of Florida because it was a University of Florida NIL collective, not one. I'll say like a car dealership that was supposed to sponsor him through NIL and didn't pay.
Well, from what I understand, the collective was private. What I think. Now, let me reread this, for example, because I'm so basically, so I'll read some quotes here, for example. So the filing includes text messages that Marcos, and this is from the ESPN article. The filing includes text messages Marcus Castro Walker, a defendant in the lawsuit who had been Florida's director of player engagement in NIL, sent to Rashada's NIL agents, including one on October 27th, 2022. And I've pulled it up if you want to pull it up, Gus. That read,
Okay.
You'll already know what we need to do over the next few days. Get us a quarterback. Another text said 3 days later said, we need to lock down Jaden. On National Signing Day, after one version of the contract had already been terminated, Castro Walker threatened that if Rashada didn't sign with Florida, Coach Napier might walk away from Jaden entirely. One source of the promised $13 million was Hugh Hathcock, a names on the building's 8-figure donor to Gators Athletics. Hathcock is also a defendant in the lawsuit, along with his Destin, Florida auto dealership Velocity Automotive. It states Hathcock approached Rashada when Rashada visited Florida in June 2022. He was able to get the quarterback whatever he needed and mentioned a possible job for his father. Later that summer, the lawsuit states Hathcock put a dollar figure on that deal, $11 million. By then, Rashada had made a verbal commitment to Miami in the offer of $9.5 million NIL deal, which was widely reported in the media at the time. According to the filing, Florida's pressure campaign came back with an offer of $13.85 million over 4 years. $5.5 million of those from Hathcock, including a $500,000 signing bonus through his car dealership, and the remainder through Hathcock's NIL collective Gator Guard. So this is a private collective through this guy's car dealership, which apparently he never had this money. And
Yeah,
basically, go ahead.
It's a messy situation because because from what I understood, of course, the University of Florida is affected by this, but all this were like a private entities. You know, the Velocity car dealership, the NIL, the Gator. What is it?
Gator Guard.
Gator Guard. Those are not direct, they are indirectly involved with the University of Florida, not directly. So I'm curious to see in the lawsuit, it's going to be Rashada versus what?
So the Rashada, it's versus filed in the Northern District of Florida. Actually, you know what? I have access to the federal court system. Let me see if I could just find it myself, because I have it as a journalist. See, it's in the U.S. District Court of Northern Florida. So it's this website called Pacer, and actually I'll present it here, and I'll show you.
No,
So this is a little bit of a
I don't want.
behind the
I don't.
scenes.
I don't want to like if this is I don't have
Oh
any
no!
problems, right?
Oh no! 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 You're good. You're good. So I'm gonna
Okay.
do. Yeah. So this is. If you don't know, anyone can sign up for this in the United States. This is the Pacer. Yeah. So this is Rashada v. Halfcock.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what I'm saying. So it's V Hancock, not
yeah.
V University of Florida.
Let's see. Let's look at the complaint here. Download selected. And I'm downloading the actual lawsuit now.
But that's what I'm getting the point that there's gonna be some rules because you know uh, it's
Yeah, so
he's suing.
let me see if I can share this PDF file. So we're going to stop sharing that. Here, hold on. I've got a lot of stuff on the screen all of a sudden. Let's see, present. Because I think this is actually super interesting to show here.
No, yeah, I think it's. I feel like we're going in the bottom of this. I know I'm kind of, and I'm glad you. Oh, what a home run by the Vols!
Oh, let's go.
What a
Who
let's
hit that?
go!
How do I show this? Let's see.
Oh, Blake Burke, his 17th home run of the season, and Tennessee is now up by 1, 6-5 in the top of the eight.
Yeah, so it
If you
says,
if you put it the PDF in your Google Chrome tab, I think you can show it.
let's see here.
Try to push and open the PDF as a tab.
Let's see here. I don't know why it's not showing as a tag here. Go back.
Shout out to Jonel Burgos and Claudio Brito.
Yeah, because it's just
Thanks
opened up as
for.
a file on my end. Because I know, like on the one that I have at work, it'll just come up in the
If
tab.
you go to the
But,
downloads and push the document, like push it into a tab, it opens as a tab.
hmm, hmm.
Or it should work like that, a PDF.
Yeah, well, I guess it doesn't on Apple. But what it says is Jaden Rashada versus Hugh Halfcock, William Billy Napier, Marcus Castro Walker, and Velocity Automotive Solutions.
So I guess
And
at the end of the day, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. Actually, I'm going to pull this up here if I can.
So I guess at the end of the day, the only person in real trouble is Bill Napier because he is the only, I guess, employee of the University of Florida that is connected to this lawsuit. And as you pointed out, if the Gators wanted to fire him, did you guys just point out to this lawsuit and be like, he violated NCAA rules that were introduced, I guess, before the
Okay.
Tennessee lawsuit?
Hey, guys, I'm going to have to leave momentarily, but I'll be
Okay.
right back in order to show this.
So while Nick is gonna be back soon, Santos just lost to America Mineiro 2-1 in the second division Serie B. The game just lost. Santos they came out a big win 4-0 at home. Lost on the road. And Tennessee is still 65 in the top of the eight. Shout out. I guess Nick is back.
Yeah, so let me see now if I can show this. Oh, there we go. Aha, there you go.
There
Yeah,
you go.
so this is the actual document filed on Tuesday here, United States District Court for Northern District of Florida, Pensacola Division. And you can see these are all the defendants right here. So Hugh Halfcock, Bill Napier, Marcus Castro Walker, and then the car dealership, Velocity Automotive Solutions. And I find this interesting. If you look at the introduction of any legal document, The first sentence is always huge in terms of how how a lawyer is going to make their case. So that very first line here, the unsuccessful recruitment of star high school athlete Jaden Rashad to UF is emblematic of the abuses running rampant in the world of big time football. And I find that just to be a very interesting sentence.
Go back to it. One sec. I like the uh and this sentences point out perfectly why there's gonna be need to like put up some rules or even like some guidelines, because it just shows how this NIL messy situation could really detriment some talent that instead of focusing on being that producing on the field, they just have to deal with that's why now I think more than ever, college athletes, especially football, need agents. That's why agents exist to negotiate those kind of deals. That's why in the NFL, athletes don't have to worry about that because they have agents that sort this through. I think now college football athletes, especially top ones like Rashada, really need an agent. If he had an agent, I think he wouldn't be in the situation.
Oh, for sure. And I think too, as well, especially when it comes to these younger players. I mean, you got to remember these are 17-year-olds making these life-altering decisions. A lot of these players are coming from really rough backgrounds. They see money and they know they can lift themselves out of impoverished situations. Um, there needs to be people there that are there protecting them. And whether there's parents involved or coaches or mentors, someone needs to be watching out for these young kids
Or
because
agents, like, because for example in soccer here in Brazil, there are athletes as young as 16-year-olds who have agents, like Endrick, for example. He has an agent. you know of course, this in Brazil was really ballooned after the Pili law that kind of gave players freedom to negotiate their contracts and put a middleman as agents. This is probably going to have to be introduced in college sports, especially in football.
yeah, because you see, for example, here, Edward Rojas, the CEO of the Gator Collective LLC, was also deeply involved throughout the effort to flip Jaden. Once he committed to Florida, this guy continued to convey false empty promises, including tell Jaden we look forward to setting him up for life. You need to set up Jaden's brokerage accounts ASAP. And Judy's rich and we just got started. So you see what type of things this Florida collective was doing. So he says, sadly, unethical and illegal tactics like this are more and more commonplace in the Wild West that is today's college football.
Yeah, this perfectly. Look at these two sentences. This lawsuit should be a big example or even a guideline of, hey, this NIL as it is right now is broken. There should be NIL, but there should be ways, or even like kind of, and not only to protect alleys, it's to protect also the programs, because Rashada is uh, suing the Gator Collective, the Velocity, Billy Napier, because he been deceived. He also broke a contract from University of Miami. So I think Rashada, at the end of the day, this situation I see in the future, the NCAA or even the all Power Five schools or whoever now guides college athletes are going to be looking into this and be like, hey, we really need some changes in order for this situation to become messier.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think a lot of coaches are going to be looking at this particular situation and saying, okay, how do I not end up at the barrel of a lawsuit? I think they're going to make sure their collectives are in order and make sure that they can trust them. But clearly, there's a lot of people who are going to see this situation and say, okay, I can come in and take a buck. Have you ever watched Friday Night Lights, the TV
Mm,
show?
I heard of, but I never did, but I should.
Yeah, well, there's a character in there. His name is Buddy Garrity. He's a TV. He owns a car dealership, like this guy. And this dude was doing all kinds of weird, shady stuff, like paying for players to live inside the town in specific areas. So it'd be zoned for his preferred high school, and giving him some kickbacks for playing football. Um, you know, that type of stuff is real. That type of stuff is very real. And to kind of circle this back to the NCAA, as you said, like you're going to need, because we already have, NCAA compliance officials within athletic departments, including Tennessee. You're going to need like compliance officers to make sure that you're within a salary cap. You're going to have to find someone who's able to divvy up your revenue, whether you're going to do it equally per sport or if you're going to do it proportionally to what they bring in. But if it's proportional to what they bring in, then all these other sports are going to get nothing because football brings in all their revenue. And that's going to be something that's going to have to be titled with Title IX. I feel like Congress is going to have to step in with some sort of legislation on this, I would think. But do we really want Congress to come in and say what these college athletes get to make? Because I feel like at the end of the day, that should be up to the free market.
But the problem of the free market is that college athletics right now is it's there's no leadership because the NCAA it's like, for example, I always bring up, oh, the NCAA, feels like a communist country, but right now it feels like, when East Germany kind of fell apart and then went to kind of capitalist. At first, people get lost. It's hard to adjust, and that feels right now. The NCAA ruled so tightly this compensation that now with first the NIL and now this situation and now this ruling this week, the Pandora box is such open that now NCAA can't control it, and they're now just giving up. They're like, we don't go ahead, do as you like. We can't control anything, so we're not gonna, solve the situation. That's what it feels like to me. I don't know if I'm exaggerating.
I mean, it's certainly it's an interesting comparison because we live in an era where we don't really know. Like those East Germans in the early '90s, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to expect. And I would agree that we're kind of in that same era now. And that's why you see a lot of coaches that are leaving the sport, that are retiring early, that don't want to deal with this any longer because it's a stressful job. And because I know Josh Pate says this all the time, where there's a lot of coaches that you don't think are close to retirement who really are that close to retirement. And I think that's going to be one thing that really comes out of all of this as we're going to the ninth inning in Tennessee Miss State with the Vols up by 1. So,
and for example, I feel like Nick Saban, if the environment were different, he would have stayed for like 3 or even 2, 3, 4 more years. But he knows that he can't handle all this off the field circus that became college football. That's why he's like, I'm done. I'm gonna go be a TV analyst where I get paid a lot of money and do way less work.
oh, for sure. For sure. They could take the Butch Jones route, be the intern. But I just we just don't know. Like as I said, college football as a whole, we're just entering into a new era. We're entering into an era where Texas and Oklahoma is in the SEC. The SEC is no longer on CBS. The Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore, and payers are now getting paid. And we have a 12-team college football playoff. I mean, do we think there's a possibility that we're throwing too much change into the sport at once?
Yes. I feel like in first this kind of compensation. If the NCAA, when the first big TV contracts were signed, be like, okay, we're seeing a different, it's not as it were in the 60s and 70s and early 80s. For example, when the Pontiac, the SMU situation happened, the NCAA should have think about it. So we're seeing the money is really being a factor. For example, for Southern Methodist University to get players to paid instead of reflecting and act changes slowly, or even think about it. They went so ruling and shut down that now they're opening. They're all this happened at once, and we happen to don't know what to expect next.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we all have to acknowledge that at to a certain extent, this was inevitable.
Yes.
Uh, I mean, you can't have something this popular like college football in this country and have it not go through radical changes. I mean, every company goes through changes to try to stay profitable, to try to stay ahead of the curve. That's why you have stakeholder meetings. That's why no company stays stale because that's why Coke tried New Coke in the 80s. Because if the product stays the same forever, it's going to fall by the wayside. Just look at baseball. Just look at boxing. I mean, football, yes, it's extremely popular right now. It's the forefront of the culture. But it wasn't like that 100 years ago. And there's a chance
or
it might
even
not be
50
like,
or even 50 years ago.
yeah,
50 years ago, like we
yeah.
don't have to go back a century, half a century. Baseball was the number one sport, like was
Yeah,
America pastime, and it's not that anymore.
right. And if you think about it, like look at what a lot of young kids in this country like. They like soccer most. Like in 50 years, what's not to say that soccer is the most popular sport in America? I mean, the odds are. I mean, you just don't know. Football isn't guaranteed to be where we are forever, and that's why I'm okay with change, especially when it comes to like how we choose a champion and stuff like that, and especially with these players getting played. Um, I do wonder though, because I've always felt like when it comes to college football, the thing that makes this game stand out is the regionality of it, and the fact that you have all these little conferences, and we're really going away from that. And I think people I think are really going to miss those aspects of it. And when you add little things like this, you're going to alienate some folks. Um, but I will say this: I think obviously, you're not going to find I think anyone rational who's going to be mad at players getting played. Like when there's this much money involved, these players are employees and they should be getting paid. Um, and then on top of that too, I'm going to start seeing like unions get involved. How long is it before we see a players union start?
Or a collective bargaining agreement. They'll
Right.
you know, and this collective bargaining agreement is going to be um, as a whole as a college athletics, or each sport's going to have their own collective bargaining agreement. Because football is, you negotiate one way, baseball is another way, softball is another way, because you have to negotiate with the allocation of money you have available, I would think.
And also, too, could it be a situation where you see it be more conference to conference, a cruiser? But think about this: the Big Ten is in states that often have more likely to have unions, while the SEC tends to be in states that don't have unions and tend to be right to work states. Um, could we see that? Like, what if we get into a situation where, okay, a player's trying to choose between Michigan and Alabama, and at Michigan, they'd be like, okay, you can come here and be a part of a union, or you can go to Alabama where you don't have as many workers' protections rights. I mean, how far we are? Could that be a possibility? With the
and even and even more, if that so happens, for example, the Big Ten having players having union there but not in the SEC, and then they don't come into agreement of some sort of collective bargaining unit, should we see the Big Ten not playing a season, the SEC playing a season? How do you determine the
could you
national champion?
imagine? I mean, think about the crap show that was 2020. Remember when the
Yeah.
Big Ten started super lame? People were like, oh, why is the Big Ten not playing? And then like Trump came in and he was like, oh, look, I came in and saved the Big Ten and saved the season. Um, it didn't help him at the end, but he tried to take credit for it. Um, it's the scenarios here, the Pandora's box. And I was having a conversation with my dad earlier, and he put it succinctly: the Pandora's box is open. We don't know what's going to happen here, and for one, I think it's going to be very interesting, very entertaining to watch. And for example, the Jalen Rashad thing, that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. Well, just one of the wildest situations. The fact is, Florida makes it very funny to me as a Tennessee fan. But, at the end of the day, it stops being funny once you realize, wow, this really could happen anywhere if you don't have competent leadership. And I would seriously, that's going to be the last time you see it. And you have to hope that you don't have a lot of people looking to take advantage of young, rising stars. But it feels like a situation, when we think about, like, entertainment, like, there's a lot of young people that want to be famous singers and famous actors and famous actresses that they get taken advantage of in Hollywood. We could be setting a lot of these young athletes up for a similar fate if, as you said, you don't have agents or someone there to protect them. And I guess that's the main thing here is we want to make sure the players here are protected because they're the ones putting their bodies on the lines for our enjoyment every single Saturday. They're the ones who are probably going to develop CTE and have chronic injuries based on what they do on falls on a Saturday because it gives so many of us, like, look at the backdrop behind me. It gives so many of us just something to look forward to throughout the year. Like, I think about Tennessee football on the daily, and it's May right now. And I know a lot of other people the same way. And I want to see those guys get something for putting it all out there.
And I feel like I want to see what I really hope that what came out of this is some sort of a organization or at least a leadership because at the end of the day, I feel like having commissioners for conferences is not enough. There should be a CEO of college football, a CEO of college basketball, and I know at the end, like in a lot of people are like, oh, you can't separate sports. It's the university sport, but come on, like football is different than baseball or softball. There should be like a CEO for college football that will deal with this playoff situation, setting up like each CEO of each sport be like, hey, what's gonna be the money that players would be paid, or like some sort of like you don't see leadership come out of this because pro leagues have commissioners from their leagues. You don't have a commissioner for the NFC or the AFC. You have the commissioner for the NFL that deal with all the 32 owners that owns the football franchises.
Right. And remember, each one of those teams are their own individual businesses. And let's not get it wrong. Let's get it twisted. Every single university is a business, whether they're public, whether they're private, non-for-profit, for-profit. It's a business. If they weren't a business, we'd be completely free to go to school. But it isn't free. And it'd be completely free to go to games. But guess what? You got to pay to go to games. You got to pay to park. You got to pay for concessions. So, and as you said, I saw tickets tonight in Hoover for this Tennessee Miss State game, which by the way, still 6-5, top of the ninth. And also, I know we haven't mentioned it at all. Wolves Mavericks, the Timberwolves Mavericks in game 2, coming down to the wire too, 104-103. 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter there. And a back and forth matchup. I've got that on my computer screen, looking back at my TV at the Tennessee game. Busy night in sports. But
yeah, we have also the Florida Panthers and the New York Rangers on game 2 going to overtime. They're tied 1-1.
Wow, that's the second straight night because last night we had Oilers and Stars go to double overtime. But we're going to get into all that here in a little bit. But
what a day we pick up to do the pod. Busy Friday night.
Very, very busy Friday night. But in any case, I think to kind of start wrapping this particular topic up, it's good for the players. And I think I heard Paul Feinbaum say this earlier. If the NCAA didn't do this, their days were numbered. I still think their days are numbered as an organization. I think the NCAA is going to not exist over the next 5 to 10 years. I just don't think it's going to. I just don't see why any of these conferences are going to maintain its existence.
Or I won't say I don't want NCAA. What I want to see is a new NCAA is focusing on organizing college athletics. Organizing kind of compensation, uh, allocation. These kind of things. Not setting rules to punish teams, but setting rules of what teams should be focusing on and what to do next. That's what the focus of NCAA or whatever is came out of it, because there's gonna be a needed for a national athletics a national collegiate athletics department. Like there if NCAA cease to exist, there's gonna be a new organization.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's no way that college athletics moves forward without some sort of national oversight. Because then, what if you just because if you left each conference to their own devices, I couldn't even imagine how anarchic that would be. I mean, could you imagine if the Big Ten SEC is like, all right, we're not going to mess with each other anymore. We're just going to have our own conferences. We're just going to have our own champions. And whoever wins our conference is the real national champion. Could you imagine some sort of anarchy like that? There's going to be a national organization that's going to make sure that doesn't happen. Asked
Like
Kirby
I feel
Connell.
like I think we need to kind of like to privatize NCAA, like some sort of a private entity takes over and act as a business, not as a government entity.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think that is inevitable at this point. All right, we still have some other cultural things that are semi-related. I want to bring this up because Dabo Swinney, which has been a topic of conversation on this podcast before, with his lack of use for the transfer portal. So he was asked why he isn't using it, because Clemson once again has signed no one from the portal. He said, quote, "We have 22 players transferring in from high school." I mean, Dabo, you're smarter than that. That's
That's such a
you know.
foolish answer. Like, I mean, oh yeah, they're leaving their high school to go to college, but they're not. This is inevitable. They're not transferring. They're going natural pathway. When you're transferring, you're going from one university. He's probably gonna get done in Clemson by like 1 or 2 years if he has this kind of mentality.
That's what I'm saying. Either he's going to be a complete genius for sticking naturally and not going for the portal, or he's going to go where, like you said, and just completely fall apart. Because Clemson has gotten worse every single year for the past 4 years. And, game one this year, they've got Georgia. So, good luck with that, Dabo. I hope your transferred in high school students can beat Georgia, because I feel like you'd have a slightly better shot with transferred college students. But Dabo Swinney knows best. Now, and I know he has 2 national titles, but let's be real. Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence won him those championships.
Of and if you don't adapt, you ended up being left behind.
Yeah. And I haven't heard Dabo say anything on this paying players. I'm sure he doesn't like it. I'll be curious to see what his opinion is.
I remember an interview he said, if players are paid, I'm gonna leave the sport. I really want to find this quote. He literally said that.
I remember him saying that. I have a suspicion, though, that he won't. I think he'll stay. Because Dabo Swinney ain't making the money he's making right now anywhere else.
Yeah, he said in 2019, Dabo says he may quit college football if players get paid.
Well, put in the resignation notice, buddy. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling he isn't going to stick to his word. Okay. So, to lighten up the mood here, because obviously we've talked about some pretty wild topics here. College Football 25 video game dropped a trailer earlier this week from EA Sports. Man, I'm excited for this. I'm very excited now. I am hesitant because it's EA Sports and they don't have a great track record. And I don't have a PlayStation 5 yet. I am mulling it if I'm going to buy it. But if I do, I'm definitely going to get this game because the trailer looks pretty awesome. I don't think that's the way the game's going to look like when it does eventually come out. But still, I'm excited the fact that college football video games are back. And hopefully it's good for the sport moving forward. And especially now we've got players getting paid. They'll be in the game with the playoffs and format and everything. It's a good time. It's going to be an exciting thing to have back.
Oh yeah, it was inevitable. I mean, it was like a what, 11 years hiatus, 12.
Yes. NCAA 14 was the last one. So I'm
Yeah. So of course fans are hyping this up because you know eh, for that amount of year, more than a decade, there was a void that was created by this messy situation that how can you produce a video game when you cannot use players, and then there were you know how can you like sort this out, and at least NIL cleared this way.
right. Yeah, honestly, I was just thinking about this. What if I did if I got this game, but I did like a let's play during a podcast when this comes out, and we could like look at the new game and basically like it'd be like a Twitch stream almost.
That would be cool. That would be really interesting. We'll
Yeah,
have to definitely set this up.
yeah, I'd have to explore how to do that because I've never done that before. But that's an idea that just came across my brain here. And one last college note: big news for our basketballs. Chaz Lanier, who averaged over 20 points a game, 44% from three, and was one of two players to average over 40% from three and have over 90 dunks last year. Do you want to know who the other player was, Gus, that did that last year?
Mm, Dalton Connect.
Yes. And basically, Tennessee and Rick Barnes have gotten Dalton Connect 2.0 and Chaz Lanier. And in fact, two of the top five most efficient players in basketball last year were Chaz Lanier and Darlingstone Dubar, who are both now on Tennessee. So I think this is an incredible transfer class for Rick Barnes. He has absolutely killed it here. And I think we're going to be right back at it next year. Now, I don't know how the rest of the sport's going to fly, but I think we should be right back at the top of the SEC. We should be fighting for another regular season championship. And I can see another deep run, especially if Lanier hits. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to be exactly like Dalton Connect. That's a lot to ask because Connect is the best player I've seen at Tennessee. So I'm not going to put those expectations on him. But I do think, when you look at additions like Felix Okapara and Igor Milovac, and then you still have Zakai Ziegler running the point. You still got Jemai Maestrak. We saw what JP Estrella could do this year at times. We got Jordan Gainey still there coming off the bench. I do like what this team has. And I can see them being competitive again next year. But we'll just have to wait and see until November. Now, we do have the NBA playoffs, and we actually have an interesting situation here. So the Mavericks hit the ball off 8 seconds, 7 seconds. Luka has the ball down 2. Luka going to step back, take a free. He hits it with 3 seconds left. And the Mavericks have taken a 1-point lead as Luka Doncic has taken a 1-point lead in Minneapolis. A step back three over Rudy Gobert. Cool, calm, and collected. And Luka is just yelling right at Rudy Gobert. Way to transition there into the NBA playoffs. Wow.
Yeah, what a performance.
Yeah. I mean, just unreal. I mean, what a night in sports, Gus. I'm glad we waited as the Volunteers win in Hoover. 6-5. We will advance to play tomorrow to Vanderbilt. I'll be honest, I don't know how to really feel about this. I want to get the rest, but screw it. Why not? Why not go win the SEC tournament at this point? You might as well. Our third semifinal appearance is 2013, uh, and in those other two appearances, made the championship in 2021 and 22. So good job to the Volunteers. So now Minnesota is going to come back out. I would assume the ball is going to go to Anthony Edwards. Down 3 seconds. It's a 1-point game. Dallas cannot foul. And I will say this, Florida and the New York Rangers are 1-1 now, starting in overtime. They're a minute in. All right, here comes Minnesota. 3 seconds left. They're going to inbound the ball. Let's see who they get the ball to. They're going to get it to Edwards. Edwards. He passes it over, and it's missed. And Dallas goes up 2-0 in the Western Conference Finals. And Luka is fired up as Luka gets a signature moment in Minneapolis. And I got to be honest, you have to feel awful for the fans in Minnesota, because isn't that just another heartbreaker that those fans have had to suffer over the years?
Another, because now they're gonna. I mean, if there's any consolation, they won all. I guess all games on the. Like, they won the majority of the road games in the Denver series. So if they went to the Mile High, to the altitude, and were able to beat the current NBA champion on the road, why not think they cannot do it against Dallas? At least if I am a Timberwolves fan, I will hold on to that. But I know it feels like it's slipping through the hands when they lost their both games at home.
And in such heartbreaking fashion, too. They were up late in both games, and Dallas got away from them both times. I mean, that's just demoralizing. I mean, how do you mentally recover from that? Because now you got to go to Dallas. Now you're down 2-0. Luka tonight dropped 32, 13 and 10, a triple double, and a game winner. I mean, Luka. I mean, people have always wondered, can he get it done on the big stage? He showed he can. But if you're Minnesota, how do you come back from this? Because I mean, it feels like.
And you know what's funny? At the end of the day, how Kyrie Irving always meant to be the number 2 player, like, because he now is flourishing again when he doesn't have to be the star player. Luka is the star player.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. Like Scottie Pippen, and it's fondly remembered as one of the best players of all time, and he was never the number 1. Like some players are just meant to be the 2. And Kyrie is this generation's Scottie Pippen. He's meant to be the 2.
If he wins this title with the Mavericks, I guess we can argue that he's going to be mentioned in the Hall of Fame like Scottie Pippen did. But he is now going to be more than ever a player that everybody talked about when they were number 2. They were productive because in Boston and in Brooklyn, he failed miserably as a star player.
Oh yeah, and that's just even though basketball has so few players, it's all about your situation. It's all about the path that you have to go with, and for Kyrie, it just happened at Cleveland with LeBron was a great fit, and it just happens now because it still blows my mind because last year when he was initially sent to Dallas, it was such a failure at first. That team was playing no defense. They didn't make the playoffs. They were like, how is this ever going to work? And now they're 2 wins away from the NBA Finals. It's crazy how quickly some things can change.
Totally. Totally how, and I mean, how this adjustment, and credit where credit is due. I think Jason Kidd did a tremendous job. He almost fired last season. So to bounce back like that, like he should be considered for coach of the year.
I could definitely agree with that. Now, I think there's a lot of coaches here. I think Minnesota's coach, Chris Finch, should get that nod. I think OKC's coach should get that nod. And there's a lot of young teams that have had great seasons. And obviously, right now, heartbreak city for Minnesota. But let's not forget how they got here. A gutsy comeback win against Denver. I mean, first and foremost, they were down 3-2 in that series. Had some heartbreaking losses there. But then they came back, forced Game 7, and then down double digits came back and stunned Denver on their home court in Game 7. The Denver Nuggets, to me, were the most disappointing team in these playoffs because I had them getting back to the NBA Finals. I thought that Jokic and Murray would carry the day, but the rest of that roster just couldn't get it done. And last year, the rest of that roster was good enough to get them over the hump. And also, I think they benefited from playing the Miami Heat.
Kind of like Milwaukee the season before that.
Yeah, they feel a lot like Milwaukee. You're right. And now you're kind of in a situation now where we kind of don't have a bona fide dynasty right now in the NBA. Since the Golden State Warriors died, we haven't had, since the Raptors killed Golden State, we haven't had a team repeat.
And I think that for a long time, there's not going to be a repeat because if, for example, Dallas goes to win it all, that will be the third straight team that has an international star to win an NBA champions. And all those three stars on the top of their game, Luka, Jokic, and Giannis, they are kind of, the prime of the league. You don't see a dynasty where you have all the good players in one team. You have teams spread out because now nobody wants to build a super team anymore. You want to get your roster with young core players, maybe find an international player that will flourish, and that's the recipe. You don't want to build like it was try like 7 years ago, Brooklyn, the Clippers, those recipes are done.
Oh, for sure. Because what teams have figured out is efficiency matters more than star power. Because yeah, you can have all the names you want, but like if you have Russell Westbrook right now, he's about the most inefficient player that you could possibly have on your roster. But you can find some no-name basketball player who's going to be way more efficient than he is. And efficiency wins games. And if you have a high enough efficiency, it'll win you championships. When I was talking about the Chaz Lanier earlier for the Vols. I mentioned how he was the most efficient player in the country, and that's going to be huge for us in college. And that gets magnified in the NBA. And the Mavericks as an offense are just super, super efficient because it's not just Luka. I mean, you look at the rest of the roster. Daniel Gafford had 16 tonight. He has really flourished. He's a center from Arkansas. PJ Washington only had 10, but he's had some big games. Derek Lively is really flourishing as a rookie center coming off the bench for the Mavericks, because he went to Duke. Like, this is a team that has become much more well-rounded and has provided Luka with enough support. And, it's really impressive because Minnesota has a really good defense. We saw what they did to Denver. And they had a really spread out attack tonight. You had Naz Reid come off the bench at 23. Of course, Edwards had 21. But, 5 of 17 is not fantastic. I will have to, I do have to point that out. Karl Anthony Towns only 4 of 16 shooting. And that's the thing with Cat. I've been very critical of Cat over the years for Minnesota. But he's had some amazing games in these playoffs. And he is very much I think he's a star. I think I have to concede that he's 100% a star in this league. But it's nice like tonight where it keeps him away from being remotely close to being a superstar. And I question if he'll ever be that superstar. So, I think this is a blow for Minnesota. I don't see how they're going to come back here. They got to find a way. Now, honestly, they got to find a way to win both games in Dallas. And both of these first two games have been nail biters in Minnesota. But you have to wonder here when you look at the rosters, the one player with that championship experience is Kyrie, because Luka really hasn't even been in this spot. So, well, I think the Mavs might have been in the Western Conference Finals a few years back against the Warriors, but I mean, Kyrie has won it all and hit the game winner in a game 7 of the NBA Finals. So you just have to wonder if that maybe is the edge here. And Minnesota is so young that there's some inexperience there.
Yeah, yeah. I think at the end of the day, this Western Conference Final, uh, you have a talent and a veteran player makes all the difference.
Oh, for sure. So right now, if this was before the series, I would have picked like Wolves in 7, but right now, I'm gonna have to give it Mavs in 6. Right now, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, I'm between Mavs and 5 or 6. I think it's gonna be
Yeah,
6 tops.
yeah, definitely devastating loss there for Minnesota. That's for sure. On the other side, right now, we have Celtics up 2-0 on the Pacers, and man, the Pacers, they I think have blown their one and only shot they had at this series. They had the game on Monday, on a Tuesday night rather, won. They were up in that game, and they just went into full stupid mode the last minute of the game. They had 4 turnovers, several off of Tyrese Halliburton, and then they had a really critical one with about 10 seconds left that went off the hands of Pascal Siakam. Now, I know I've talked to a lot of Pacers fans the past few days, and they think that was a foul. And it very well much was a foul. But the Pacers should have never been in that spot to where that turnover with 8 seconds would have led to the game-tying three by Jaylen Brown that eventually led to the Pacers losing in overtime in game 1 because, one, the turnovers, like there's just some horrific turnovers. And really here, my problem here is for Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, he is a very talented player. He's a great shooter, could be a great distributor of the basketball. But this guy is reckless sometimes, like too reckless. It kind of reminds me of a slightly bigger Zakai Ziegler in a way. Because remember Ziegler, Ziegler could be electric, but he can be reckless at times. And Halliburton is reckless. Like up by 5 with a minute left. I believe it was 3 or 5. Like, the shot clocks in the NBA are 24 seconds. He goes down the court and up by 3 points with a minute left in the game. He shoots a contested free, step back free, with 15 seconds left on the shot clock. That to me made me more confused than any turnover or any missed foul call. There are some situational decisions that the Pacers made in game 1 that earned them a loss. They stole defeat from the jaws of victory. And then last night, Halliburton gets hurt and the Celtics roll. So now they're down 2-0 going back to Indiana. Now, I will say this. Indiana was down 2-0 in the last series against the Knicks. And we saw what happened. And I guess we can segue into that real quick. Gus, I know you're a Knicks fan. What happened? I mean,
He ran out of gas. Unfortunately, this team ran out of gas. That's why I was really rooting at Game 6 because this team is still young. There was a lot of pressure in Game 7 at the Garden, and unfortunately, Indiana had more gas than the Knicks. And do you know who was even more sad than New York Knicks fans? ESPN.
oh
ESPN
yeah.
probably was devastated. Imagine a Knicks Celtics series, even if there was a sweep. The ratings would have go to the roof.
Oh, for sure. But I think this leads us to the other conversation here. Tom Thibodeau once again runs his team into the ground for no reason at all. As much as people hate the term load management, there's a reason why it exists. As long as the NBA has this absurdly long regular season with 81 games, and let's be real, the NBA should not have 82 games in a regular season. It's too long. They need to shorten it. To what number? I don't know. but it makes each individual game meaningless in the regular season. But Tom Thibodeau believes, every single game's like Game 7. We're going to play everyone to their full content. And guess what? He has 5 players hurt by the end of the series. That's not an excuse for the Knicks. They were defeated fair and square by Indiana, but they did it to themselves. Why are you running your team into the ground throughout the season? And Tom Thibodeau has done this time and time again. Look what he did to Derrick Rose in Chicago.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, as much as intense Thibodeau is, he is gonna have to rethink the way he guides his roster in an NBA season.
Absolutely. But I hope the Pacers, for their sake, can at least get a game here in 3 or 4. It depends on Halliburton's health. But I say Celtics in 5 at best, and it might be a sweep. But still, obviously, a great run for Indiana. Like, there's no shame in Indiana losing this series. I mean, you are a 6 seed, and you have absolutely blown expectations out of the water. Between this and being runners-up in the NBA in-season tournament, I mean, a fantastic season for Indiana. So there's nothing to be ashamed of.
No, yeah, and even the Knicks, the Knicks, I feel like is in the right track. I think
Absolutely.
they're gonna be back in the playoffs.
Yeah. So unless something really crazy happens, we're staring at a Dallas versus Boston series, which I feel like ESPN will be happy with. Those are 2 pretty big markets.
Yeah.
So, and of course, you would have, and think about this, the spicy storyline: Kyrie versus Boston in the NBA Finals.
Whoa.
That would be incredible television. But we'll have to see if both of them can get 2 more wins to finish it out. And, oh my gosh, I thought the Rangers had won it. But great save there by Florida. Wow. And they keep on playing.
Yeah, the Rangers are really pressuring, but Florida is. I mean, if Florida wins, it's gonna be a kind of like Rangers fans are gonna be really really disappointed because their team are playing really hard.
Oh, for sure. And I guess we'll just go around Stanley Cup now. I'll save Caitlin Clark here for just a minute, because New York, they're at home. They've had the best record this season, and man, it's just you got to find a way to get this one if you're New York. You don't want to go back to Miami down 2-0, or technically Sunrise, Florida, wherever they technically play at, but. You don't want to go back to Florida down 2-0 because this is a team that just made the Stanley Cup Finals last year. They know how to win here. And all the pressure right now is on the Rangers inside of Madison Square Garden.
I mean, New York has to win this game because down 2-0, losing both games at MSG, going to Florida, it's gonna be like Minnesota.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just thinking. You don't want to be like Minnesota. Don't be like Minnesota. Then in the Western Conference Finals, that game was also incredible last night. Oilers Stars could be an all-time series. Now the Oilers got Game 1 thanks to an overtime goal by Connor McDavid, who had a signature moment for him. A superstar finally gets a signature moment in the postseason. And it's pretty interesting because, Wayne Gretzky is on the TNT panel. Of course, he is the most famous hockey player ever. Played for Edmonton for most of his career. And now he's looking at the best player in Edmonton since he left, which is really, really interesting. Of course, the Oilers blew out Vancouver at Vancouver in Game 7, which was quite funny. Because Vancouver, let's be real, they got lucky against Nashville in the first round. Because Nashville self-imploded 3 times in that series. But, man, I think Oilers Stars is going to go to 7.
Yes.
And I still think Oilers win it in 7. Now, Panthers, Rangers, man.
Rangers in 7.
Yeah. But if the Panthers win here, I think they'll get it. But, man, lots of pressure right now in both of those series. Now, to kind of direct it back to basketball real quick. we're tuned to follow the story of Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, and things haven't gotten any easier for them. They are still winless, 0-5. However, I do want to say that in the third quarter tonight, they are trailing the Los Angeles Sparks by just a point, and they've actually outscored them 13-3 in the third quarter. Caitlin Clark has 5 points in 23 minutes of play. You know,
But what basketball fans have to realize is that there's a reason why Indiana Fever had the number one pick in the WNBA draft is because they were not good. It's like Victor Wembanyama, why he went to the Spurs because the Spurs not doing good. So you need to have some patience because uh, the Fever eventually is going to develop a team around Caitlin Clark that they're going to be good, but there's going to be taking at least 2 seasons.
right, but still, like no matter how good or bad your team is, I feel like I'm concerned that like 6 games in, that Caitlin Clark is 2 of 10 shooting and 0 of 6 from free. Like that's concerning to me. Um, Now, granted, she has 9 rebounds, so you got to credit her. She's clearly giving a lot of effort. And she only has 1 turnover. She is taking care of the ball a lot better, but she's not really lining it up so far. And then particularly, then compare her to the second overall pick, Cam Brink, who's on the Sparks. She has 6 tonight, but is 3 of 6 shooting, so she's much more efficient uh, than Caitlin is. So, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. Of course, we'll just have to see how she continues to develop over the year. But we'll see how long it takes them to get a win here. And they might get a win tonight, maybe. But I will say this: she did drop 22 last Saturday, 17 on Monday, and 21 on Wednesday. So she's been doing all right, and has been shooting decently well. But the WNBA is a lot harder than college, so be interesting to see how she continues to develop. And when she finally gets that first win, maybe she'll get it tonight in Los Angeles against the Sparks. All right, a little bit of golf here, and this is not really about the actual golf tournament. It's about the crap show that was outside of the golf tournament. Scotty Scheffler was trying to get into Valhalla Golf Course in Louisville for the PGA tournament, and they had the entrance shut down because of a fatal incident outside, which obviously that's terrible. But for some reason, he's an official PGA gear, and the police officers in Louisville, which have the most sterling reputation of all time. If you know, you know. But Scotty Scheffler got arrested trying to enter the golf tournament, even though he's literally the number one golfer of all time. And the officer claimed that he assaulted him, even though the officer threw himself onto his car. Just an absolute mess. And Louisville is probably not going to get this tournament back, and may not get a lot of other pro sports events back if that's the way the police are going to operate in their city.
Yeah, it's a messy situation. It's uh, and what crazy is that he left prison and did well in the golf course.
Yeah. Of course, he's the number one golfer of all time. Now, it was an exciting finish to the actual tournament itself. Xander Scheffler won the entire tournament by a single stroke on the final shot. He had to hit it, or otherwise he would have gone to a runoff with Bryson DeChambeau. So, not rare you see a golf tournament come down to literally the final shot. But it was a good tournament. But man, was marred by that incident, that's for sure. That's all anyone's going to remember is Scotty Scheffler getting arrested. But the mugshot is absolutely hilarious. I will give it that. All right. Some racing to wrap it up here. Now, we did have the All-Star race this past week at the historic North Wilkesboro Speedway. Joey Logano won the race. He had led basically every lap. And the Rangers have won. The Rangers have won in overtime 2-1. And we have a tied series. And they are going absolutely crazy in MSG. I want to hear what it sounds like. And you can hear in the background.
Yeah. Let me put on it. It it's so like disappointing when you have to hear in Portuguese because there's no like sound of the fans. I'm gonna because I can feel it how MSG is going nuts.
I mean, is there anything like Madison Square Garden for either the NBA or the Stanley Cup playoffs?
No,
It's just goosebumps. Like I have to get up there for either the Rangers or the Knicks in the playoffs. Just
the once in a
goosebumps,
lifetime
man.
experience.
Yeah, yeah, just unreal. But in any case, back to so yeah, it
Racing.
looks like so at least the hockey conference finals are off to both are off to some wild starts here. Um, anyways, Logano dominated the race. Not really a great race. Still really need to work on their short track package to encourage more passing. But we did get a fight. We did get a fight between Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had taken a free wide on lap one. Busch ended up in the wall. Busch blamed Stenhouse for it, so he came back the next lap and just wrecked him. Straight up wrecked him. So Stenhouse, after he gets wrecked, parks it in Busch's hauler. It says, I'm going to sit here for the entire race because I can't leave this short track. I'm going to wait on you to finish your race, to confront you. So he sits there for the entire race. It's in street clothes. Busch finishes the race. It's in the back of the pack. He wrecks another guy, actually, during the race. Doesn't have a good night. So Busch goes back to his hauler to undress from the race. And Ricky Stenhouse is just waiting there, confronts him. They have a couple of words. And Stenhouse throws a punch. And it's a full-on brawl between the teams and his dad. So it's a pretty wild situation. And the thing to me that's really interesting here is Busch wasn't fined anything, even though he wrecked him on track. And Stenhouse was fined $75,000 for the punch. And I think that's unfair. Busch intentionally wrecked Stenhouse on the racetrack. Which, gotta remember, this is a dangerous sport. You could injure someone by intentionally wrecking them. And it's more dangerous, I think, to crash a race car than to get punched in the face. I would argue. I don't know how you feel about that, Gus, but I think it's more dangerous to wreck a race car than get punched in the face.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So why are we
But it was
only
a funny.
pushing?
But it was a funny. But it was a funny um, situation. I'll say.
Oh yeah, quite entertaining. But I doubt Stenhouse will retaliate any further from this because they've settled at North Wilkesboro, and it's like Vegas. What happens at Wilkesboro stays in Wilkesboro. They have the longest race of the year this weekend at Coke 600. And we'll say this, there is one thing that's really putting a dark cloud over the sport. Tony Stewart's team. Now, you remember Tony Stewart? He's a famous race car driver. Infamously killed a guy while driving a short track race. It wasn't his fault. Kevin Ward Jr. walked out in front of him. But he owns a team now in NASCAR with Gene Haas, who owns a team in Formula One. That team looks like they're about to close shop. They're done. Tony Stewart has had issues for NASCARs for years, especially, and it's kind of petty. Tony Stewart owns a short track in Ohio called Eldora, and he loves dirt racing. And remember when Bristol went to dirt racing a few years back?
Yeah, I remember. Even
yeah, because you covered a race up there for the dirt.
no, I wasn't. I didn't cover the dirt, but I ended up visiting the track while the dirt was still on.
Right. So Tony Stewart was upset about that because he really wanted that dirt race to go to his track at Eldora. So basically, ever since then, he was like, yeah, I don't care about NASCAR anymore. So basically, he straight up has dissed NASCAR ever since. And now he focuses more on drag racing, and his team stinks because he doesn't care about it anymore. So he basically, 4 drivers now, Chase Briscoe, Noah Gragson, Ryan Preece, and Josh Berry are probably now not going to have rides next year because their rides are going to be gone. Their cars are going to be gone. So it's a pretty crazy situation, and I think it's a shame. I think Tony Stewart should get over himself. I get it. That you wanted your track, but let's be real. Eldora is in the middle of nowhere in Ohio. It seats 30,000 seats. I mean, you think NASCAR would take that big of a risk when they could just turn a 160,000 seat stadium into a dirt track? Like, come on, it's just not good business sense. And I think it's just petty on his part. And, if he doesn't want to be involved, so be it. But I just don't think he's handling it the right way. And I hate it for everyone that works for him because they deserve better. And they deserve an owner that's actually involved. And Kevin Harvick, who used to drive for him, said as much because Kevin Harvick now announces for Fox. And, he was filling in for Kyle Larson, who I'll get into in just a second. Last week in practice, he's like, Rick Hendrick is so much more involved. And I think in racing, especially, if your owner's not involved, then you're just screwed. I mean, it's like if your general manager doesn't care. Yeah, but in any case.
It's a complicated situation, definitely.
Yeah. But I think for the 600 this week, it's a long race. It's been a really chaotic race the last couple of years with the new car. It's been one of the best races, honestly, on the schedule. So I'm excited for it. And I think a lot of this depends on what happens at the Indy 500. Now, the Indianapolis 500 has, obviously, is one of the most famous races in all over the world with IndyCar going around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So there's two big things here to really watch for. One, Kyle Larson, normally a NASCAR driver, champion of NASCAR, one of the best drivers in the world, is starting fifth. He qualified fifth for the Indianapolis 500, which is an incredible accomplishment. Absolutely spectacular. So he's going to try to race both the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 on the same day. It's called the double. And he's going to try to successfully do 1,100 miles in one go, which is insane. However, Mother Nature might get in the way of that because we're looking at potentially a severe weather outbreak in Indianapolis on Sunday. So that could preclude the 500 from happening on Sunday. It could move it to Monday. So when it comes to the 600, Kyle Larson has been a favorite in this race for a while. And I would pick him to win, but I think it's going to be too productive with the Indy 500. My pick for the 600, honestly, give me Chris Buescher. I like Chris Buescher for the 600, and for the 500, give me Scott Dixon to win those races. But big day in motorsports on Sunday, and that does not include Monaco because no one cares about an overpriced parade.
I mean, Monaco only is a Grand Prix in Formula One because a lot of drivers have houses there, and it's more like it's like a parade. You point out good. It's a fancy parade because there's no racing. It's so tight. I mean, literally the race is decided on the day before when you set up the Grand Prix.
Yeah, and let's go take a wild guess here. I'm gonna really take a wild shot in the dark here, Gus. I think Max Verstappen will probably win this race. So
yeah, I think Mark Verstappen too.
Yeah. In any case, yeah, that's all I have for American sports. That was a lot. What a night! And I actually now have the Caitlin Clark game on now, as Cameron Brink was going to the rim and got fouled. But in any case, yes. What's going on in Brazil? I mean, I know. Are we still on the Rio Branco Championship high, or are we kind of getting back to normal?
Rio Branco, it feels we already moved on. We have to think about Paulista Cup because as I'm gonna quote Bill Belichick. As great as this moment feels, Rio Branco is 5 weeks behind the Paulista Cup schedule because a lot of teams are with most of the rosters figured out. They're already doing practice games, and Rio Branco still still negotiating with some key players like Brandão, our goal scorer, best player, best defender, still negotiating. Rio Branco trained with like 11 to 12 players this week, so was a little bit transitional. Next week we're probably gonna go full mode of training. Like 5 players are gonna come back from the original roster that won the A4, but you know, in Decio Vita, Paulista A4, as great as this title was, is now a memory. Now is on think about Paulista Cup. Brazilian national championship that is stopped since like 10 actually 2 weeks ago 2 weeks ago when they stopped because of the Rio Grande do Sul floods, but they're gonna come back next week for the week 7. All the games are set up, and the teams from Rio Grande do Sul are gonna come back, but of course they're not gonna play in Rio Grande do Sul. Grêmio, for example, is playing in Curitiba, in Curitiba football stadium. Couto Pereira Internacional is gonna play in Santa Catarina, Iliberto Yus. So, especially the teams from Porto Alegre are gonna have to play away from. It's like the New Orleans Saints, Grêmio Internacional are literally dealing to what the New Orleans Saints had to deal after
So has
Katrina.
that situation improved at all? Has it stopped raining down there, or is it still raining?
It stopped, but now this weekend the rain has come back. So now
Okay.
people are worried about if the flood is gonna go because right now at this moment they were recovering. Take the water out from homes, and this recovery was starting it. So if rain come back and the floods uh, go worse, then you know jeopardizes the recovery. So Rio Grande do Sul, especially Porto Alegre, is gonna deal with this for quite a while, and Grêmio Internacional, they're now dealing what the New Orleans Saints are dealt with. They're gonna have to play away from their fans. They are thinking, they're kind of behind the scenes, kind of asking for probably not be, kind of have this season no relegation, because, or at least they be kind of, hey, we you guys don't have to worry about relegation. But I guess the teams are not favorable of, because we create a really messy scenario
I have to say that'd
for.
be unfair to everyone else.
Yeah, that would be unfair to everyone else, because then a team that were, if going to be 15th or 14th place, were, if be relegated, be like, hey, I ended up in a position that would not be relegated if there was normal. So there's still no decision about that per se, but it's gonna be weird, because the Porto Alegre teams, Grêmio Internacional, they'll be like, now we haven't played for like a me. The last time Grêmio Internacional and Juventude play, I believe, were in week 4. Yes, week 4, which was uh, um, April 28th was the last time both played. April 28th. So hasn't been almost a month. So imagine you're out a month stopped play, and when everybody else is playing it, so they're gonna have to get back on track. So I wonder how this is gonna go and next week when they, all the teams from Rio Grande do Sul come back for playing. Uh, this midweek we had the Brazilian Cup, no upsets, all the big teams advanced. Corinthians, Sao Paulo, Palmeiras, um, Atlético Mineiro, Vasco, all the Botafogo, all the big teams advanced. Red Bull Bragantino, Fluminense, all the teams from first division advance to the round of 16 in the in the Brazilian Cup. And shout out to Indy 11 advancing in the U.S. Open Cup as well. Hopefully, we're gonna get one of their coaches to come in our podcast.
Absolutely, that'd be a lot of fun to certainly learn about Indy 11. And just, I guess, one last thing before we wrap up here. The Indiana Fever now, with 5.5 minutes left, up by 5. Maybe they can finally get their first win of the season. in Los Angeles. But that's all the time that we have here for this Friday night edition of Two Countries to America's All Sports, the only American and Brazilian sports podcast here on May 24th, 2024. I'm Nick Hill. That's Gustavo Tomazeli. Thank you so much. And for those in the United States, enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Have a good night.